record today's session. You'll see a little text box that popped up on your screen that says that we are recording. You can just hit okay. Really excited to welcome you here. I'm going to spotlight myself for a second. Everyone, thank you all for being here. My name is Rhett Burden, and I am the Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging here at Compass Family Services. And thank you for joining us for our Inclusion Talk series. This series commemorates and honors every Cultural Heritage Month. And I am so grateful that you are here joining us for Women's History Month as we observe such an amazing month with such an amazing speaker, a powerful speaker, and an amazing human being, Sara Shepard. Want to go over a few housekeeping rules again. You are welcome into the space. Feel free to turn your cameras on or off, whatever makes you most comfortable. We just ask that you keep yourself on mute. Our speaker is going to go through a presentation and then leave a little bit of time for question and answer. We also have some prizes potentially to give away for those that participate in our survey. So do me a favor, if you're in the room, put yourself on mute. Thank you so much. We are going to have a lot of fun. You are also going to be asked to complete a survey after today's session. So you will see that in the Zoom chat. So just be on the lookout, because that is how you will access the potential of winning a prize. And there are some really good ones that Sara has in store. I am going to introduce our speaker as we get folks in the room. Thank you all so much for being here, and we will get started. Sara Shepard is the #1 New York Times best-selling author of Pretty Little Liars, a 16-book series for young adults that was adapted into a hit show on Freeform. She has had several other book series turned into TV shows and is the author of over 30 novels for adults, teens, and children. A graduate of New York University and Brooklyn College, she lives in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, with her husband and 2 sons. I'm so excited to introduce each and every one of you to our guest speaker for Women's History Month for the Inclusion Talk series, and that is Sara Shepard.
Hi. Oh, good, there I am. All right. Hello. This is maybe the best Zoom event I have ever had. Thank you all for being here, and Rhett, thank you for that wonderful introduction. So I'm just going to sort of talk about my story, and I do want to leave some time for questions because I'm a writer and I feel like I always get sort of interesting writing questions. And I have a little presentation, so I am going to share my screen, and let's see if this works. All right, and I'm going to make this into a slideshow. Can we see it? Right, you can see it? All right, cool.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, hello, Compass Family Services. I was so honored to be for Rhett to reach out to me about this, especially speaking for Women's History Month. I learned a lot about what Compass Family Services does, that you have sort of been in the business of helping families find homes for over 100 years. You have a strong community presence. You're achieving family stability and equity, which is definitely something I think about a lot as a writer. And something I write about a lot in my books. And, I did a lot of course, when Rhett reached out, I sort of did a lot of research on the website about kind of what you guys were all about. And, whether, you've helped people through the Great Depression, you've supported refugees, opening the Compass Clara House. You've done so many good things over so many years. And you should all be just so proud of everything you've accomplished. I mean, I'm sort of sitting in my office, sort of just writing my little stories, but you guys are doing things that really matter, and really helping people and making lives better. And I'm just so honored to be sort of part of this. this inclusion talk series, and feel really honored. And no matter what you do for your within the organization, or if you're not in the organization, you just join me through some other way. I think that's part of what we're talking about with inclusion, is that you matter, and what you do matters, and it's important, and just always sort of remember that. And that's another big thing that I talk about a lot in my books, especially a book that I'm going to talk about a little bit later on, that I am writing now for elementary age kids, sort of feeling included even when you're, you feel a little bit out of the loop. That's always something that I have thought hard about, and it's something really, really important to me. Happy Women's History Month. So it's the end of Women's History Month. But I'm really honored to be part of talking about Women's History Month. I'm obviously celebrating strong women and recognizing the achievements and efforts of all women, and I'm going to talk in a minute about some women who in my life who aren't amazing public figures or anything else, but sort of made a huge difference in my career trajectory, and sort of made me the person that I am. And sometimes their efforts were sort of small or not even noticed. But those are the women who make a difference. The moms of the world. It's just sort of everybody kind of doing those important jobs sort of behind the scenes. So many of them are women, and I'm just so proud of everybody. But so the woman who probably, it's an obvious person, but the person who kind of had the biggest impact on my young life was my mom. My mom was she did not work. She just, she had a lot of aspirations to work, but she had kids, and it was sort of the era where that's what you do. But she was always a huge reader, and really got me into reading. Didn't care what I read, just was like, you just need, got me into that library, got me into library programs. When I got older, I would look at what she was reading, and she would give me her books, and we would exchange. And she really fostered that love of reading in me, also fostered the love of academics, and encouraged me to be a writer, although I would say my teachers, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit, maybe more so. But the thing that was the best about my mom is that growing up, I was a little bit of an oddball of a kid. I was really creative. I was sometimes pretty introverted. And my sister and I, my sister's 3 years younger than I am, and we would make up these imaginary worlds that just played into, that we carried over well into high school. And we would sometimes be very, very deep into these imaginary worlds and sort of ignore everybody around us. And we lived in a community where, I think young women were expected to act certain ways. And my sister and I, I'm hearing an echo. Hold on a second. Why am I hearing an echo? Let's try again. Okay, I'm not hearing it. Just making sure that everybody else wasn't hearing the echo. But my sister and I really, we were our own people. We were very much creative and a little silly with all of our creative ideas. And we made a lot of movies, and we wrote a lot of books, and we, kind of acted out our characters in public. And my mom could have chosen to be embarrassed by that, but she celebrated it, and she encouraged us to be as creative as we wanted to be, and sort of follow the paths that we wanted to follow, no matter what that was. And she never kind of stood in our way and put us in a box in any kind of way. And I think that's really, I model my own mothering kind of after her, as far as with my own kids, as far as like encouraging them to read, encouraging them, how important school is, but also how important I have 2 boys, just being themselves, and it's okay to be, different, and quirky, and, pursue your interests. And it's okay if you're not like everybody else. And I think that was a great lesson to learn when I was young. This is an image of things that I did when I was young. This is a big pile of all of the journals that I used to keep when I was a kid. The one on the top was probably from about 3rd grade. And then some of the others were from high school. There was one on the bottom from like 7th grade. I can recognize all of them because as a writer, I used to go back and read all of them over and over and over again to get ideas. And my mom was the one who bought me these journals and who encouraged me to read these journals. I hope she never read them. She very well might have, although she would have been disappointed, because most of the time I did not talk about feelings. I mean, sometimes I did, especially as I got older and became an adolescent, but a good deal of the time I was trying to write stories. From an early age, I just loved writing stories, and I would, I fashioned myself as I just really wanted to be an author. Never thought I would be, but I had these journals where I would, open them up. Thought I had an idea for a story. I would write a chapter 1. I was about 10 years old, by the way, at the time. And I would look at the chapter 1, and then I would be like, I have no idea what to write for chapter 2. So I'm just going to start over, and I'm going to write a completely new story. And I started over at chapter 1. So most of these books are filled with chapter 1s. And they're not really there's never a full story in any of these, but I loved writing. But I found it very hard. I made this is a cartoon from one of my journals, and it's sort of, it's a little bit cut up at the bottom, but this is from when I was about 10. I made like a line graph, and at the top it says published author. Down the line says good author, kind of an author. And then at the bottom, there's a stick figure. If you can see, me, not very good author. And then I've decided that writing a book is too hard. Here's the secret section, which mostly was talking about my mom, which, loved her, but also, she wouldn't let me do this. And, talking about my friends or something like that. I have not looked in the secret section. I mostly look through the stories, and you can kind of see on the other page, I was probably trying to write a story, and it just didn't go well. So, I started out loving writing, but really did not know, I didn't know how to do it. And I loved reading, but I didn't know how to plot a story. But I would also say that my teachers, I have a lot of women teachers who were huge influences on me. And as early as 4th grade, when I was probably writing in these journals, I was encouraged to write. And I wrote this particular story called Quizzles. Quizzles was a story. It was sort of like this early environmental story about a garden that was being destroyed. But I had great teachers, even, in my elementary years, who recognized something in me, I guess, that I didn't see. I thought everybody liked to write stories, but they recognized, you're a good writer and you should keep doing it. And I think for a kid, to be told that, especially a girl, to be told, you're good at this thing, you should keep doing this thing, was very inspiring for me, and gave me a lot of confidence. And, and in other ways, I wasn't very confident, but in writing, I felt like, well, I'm getting some encouragement with this, and this is great. That is just the beginning page. You can see the very old computer print. This is probably in 1988 or something like that. But it wasn't until high school, because for a while I had these journals, and I was writing about feelings in junior high and boys and whatever. So it wasn't until high school that I really started to write creatively again. And dared to show someone my work, because I think a lot of writers it's a really scary thing to put yourself out there. And it's a really scary thing to have this creative thing that you do, this thing that's inside your head, and an idea and a storyline and your thoughts and feelings and the way you feel about the world. And then to show that to somebody else is, it's different than like an academic paper where you're just analyzing something. A creative writing just felt so vulnerable. And for a long time, I didn't show anybody the work that I did, but I had a teacher. I had 3 English teachers in a row that were so valuable to me. And it's a big reason why I actually still go back and visit my old high school and speak at my old high school a lot, because I had 3 English teachers, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, who really made a huge impact on me as a person and as a writer. Whether they are, my first teacher, she was so creative and inspired us to write creatively and think outside the box. And I had a teacher my junior year who told me that I didn't have to write papers if I didn't want to. She said, I really see something in you. Why don't you just write a novel this year? And I was so terrified by that idea because, I'd only written in these journals and I could only write a chapter 1. I was so terrified by that idea. I turned her down. I said, no, I'll just write papers. It's okay. And then my last teacher, my senior year, she was the first person who really said, I'd love to see your creative work, show it to me. And I dared to show it to her. And she is the person who reached out to me years later after I was published and, please come back to our school, please talk. And I felt so, committed to paying that back to her, because she, had I not had these 3 great teachers, I probably would have always loved writing, but it is that encouragement and the encouragement people give to young people, especially high school age, junior high age. You're feeling so vulnerable. You're feeling so insecure about everything. You don't want to put your thoughts out there. That's terrifying. So they were the 3, huge women influencers in my life. And I am so indebted to them, and some of them I have passed away, and it's a really sad thing that I can't reach out to them anymore and tell them how much they've meant to me. But hopefully, going back to my old high school in Philadelphia, is kind of a testament to how much they've meant to me. Once I got out of high school, I did not know I was going to be a writer. I loved writing, but I went to New York University as a biology major and thought I was going to work in genetics. I was really into science. But I would say halfway through my freshman year, I really, really liked writing papers. And I had yet another teacher who said, you should be an English major. My parents were a little disappointed. I think they loved the idea of a biology pre-med major in English. They were like, what are you going to do with that? I lived in New York. I was like, I can work in publishing. And I mean, you don't make a lot of money in publishing. But that was I wanted to follow my heart and my passion. And a few years later, after I was out of college, I connected with this company who they're called a book packager, and they kind of produce books for teens and middle grade readers, but it's often with ghostwriters. So it will be an unknown author will write a whole book for them, but they won't use their name, and it won't be their idea. So, but for me, it was a great start because I just was like, I don't know how to write a book anyway. But I had to do this huge tryout. I had to write all these pages for them to prove that I actually could write. And I was sort of on pins and needles. I didn't know that I was going to actually get the project. And the first project that they had me do was called Samurai Girl. I sort of had no business writing that book because I did not have the experience of a young Japanese woman who lived in LA, who was like a samurai fighter. But it was, I did a lot of research. I asked, talked to a lot of people from that cultural background and from LA and all of that. So it was a really, really good experience. And I learned to write a book from start to finish. I learned how to plot. I learned how to be edited. It was the best way of sort of learning while doing. I went to grad school too for fiction, but this was, I really, really learned how to write. And I will say this to writers, is like, the only way you really learn how to write is yeah, you can do as much reading as you want. And that's really valuable, but it's the most important thing is just to do it, is just to get, go and like, just put something on the page and just kind of power through it, even if you think it's bad. And probably most of these first drafts were terrible, but I powered through it, and they asked me back. They had me write quite a few other books for them, never under my name. You'll see Samurai Girl was by a name they made up called Carrie Asai. The Secret Apartment was a middle grade book. It was like a Hitchcock mystery. Natalie Fast, she doesn't exist. And The It Girl was a series actually by it was a spin-off for the Gossip Girl series, which was really popular at the time. And so, but Cecily she was not the writer. I was the writer. She was too busy writing all of the Gossip Girl books. So that was kind of fun because I got to use her characters in this very popular world, and start writing about this spin-off character who went to boarding school. But actually halfway through writing the second It Girl novel, I was probably about 25, and working in a job I didn't really like full-time, because I did all this stuff sort of on the side. This was sort of my passion, and I had this very boring kind of advertising job that just sort of paid the bills, and really thought that this was all, I was just going to freelance and I was going to write these ghost written books, and that was fine. It's I was happy doing that because I was sort of fulfilling that creative need. But then my editor said, would you want to develop a series of your own? And I was like, well, yeah. And with your name on it. I was like, yeah, I would love to develop a series of my own. That would be great. But didn't think much of it. And they said, well, what would you like for it to be about? And I thought, well, I really like writing for teenagers. Some of the projects I had done were for more elementary age children, and that was a lot of fun. But there's something about writing for YA. You're experiencing so many firsts, so many strong emotions. You're pulling away from your parents. You're trying to figure out who you are, and these were all things that I still felt pretty close to at 25 years old, because I was trying to figure out who I was. And, I just felt like I can kind of speak to this age group. And, this was also in 2005, and a lot of things were changing, and there were a lot of things that I thought about, issues with teen girls that I thought were important when I was growing up that were sort of ignored or swept under the rug, or just like not looked at very closely. And that was tied also with the fact that cell phones were becoming a lot more popular, and talking on the internet was becoming more popular. And you could kind of disguise who you were and what your intentions were, and you could really bully people that way, and really kind of get under someone's skin in a way that I didn't experience in high school, but I was starting to see it with, younger people that I knew. And that, the two things together, it was kind of like the perfect storm of ideas. And I kind of say, like, I've never had such a good idea again as the idea that I came up with for Pretty Little Liars, which was the first idea that so they said to me, would you like to develop a series of your own or a book of your own? And this is sort of what I came up with, though I will say it is absolutely not, it took a long time for me to kind of flesh out what that idea was. But the idea behind Pretty Little Liars, in case you do not know, is it's basically about 5 friends. There was a ringleader, and the 5th friend kind of goes missing. She was the boss of all of them. We don't know what happened to her. And then a few years later, her her friend group, they start getting these anonymous messages. And it was very much about, the secrets they had kept from this friend who was teasing them too. And just sort of how they'd all grown apart and how they were sort of figuring out who they all were. And, it dealt with a lot of, obviously it dealt with a lot of cyberbullying, but it also dealt with how scary it is to be different, because each character was really going through, something where they didn't feel like they belonged anymore. The character of Emily, she was really developing feelings for another girl, and this was 2005, 2006. And that was not something that was really discussed a lot in YA literature, and also in the book. Her parents were kind of not a huge fan, and it was good to sort of explore that feeling. There's sort of eating disorder themes. There are and there's a lot of themes of just kind of changing and being picked on, and they were things that I felt really strongly about. And the thing that's great, and the thing that I think is the most important thing about Pretty Little Liars, it's a book series full of twists and turns and red herrings and mystery and all of that. But the most important thing is the friendship that these girls form, and the fact that they find people that they can really go to and that they can talk to. And they all are also asking the question, do I matter? Do these, messages matter? Like, maybe I do deserve to be picked on like this, or I do deserve to be tormented by A, and because I've changed, like maybe I'm less of a person now. And, it just sort of, I did it in sort of a soapy way, and, it's very entertaining, but at the heart of it, it is sort of about dealing with feeling different and kind of finding those connections and fighting your way through. And I felt very much like high school was fighting your way through, and adolescence is. So, and the greatest thing about the books is that I think a lot of readers connected to those characters. Obviously they liked the mystery of it, and the thriller, and the fast pace, and all the twists and turns, and the soapiness. But the most messages I got online, on Twitter and on Instagram and Facebook and whatever, were I didn't see myself in a character before I read these books, before I met Emily, or before I met Spencer, Hannah, or Aria. I didn't see them, and that's, for an author, that's really what you want to achieve. You want to kind of reach those people who didn't feel understood or didn't feel seen, and those were the most valuable messages I always got. Those, and the fact that those are the ones that where people would write to me and say, I didn't read books before reading yours. That was always great too, because I always want to encourage readers. In 2010, I got a very big surprise. I found out that after writing 8 of these books, I got a call out of the blue that the sort of production company that had optioned Pretty Little Liars long ago had sold the pilot to ABC Family, which was what Freeform was called at the time. And they were going to make a pilot episode of Pretty Little Liars. And I was kind of like, what? I had no idea this was in the works, because that's often what happens as an author, and your material gets optioned for TV. You have no idea where it goes. Somebody else is working on it. You don't have a lot of control over it. So I was really surprised. I was kind of scared, because I loved these books. This is my first this is my first book series under my name. All of the characters are very personal to me, and the story is very personal to me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope that, they do it justice and they're nice to it, and, whatever. And I remember I was sent the pilot episode in the script form and started reading it. And it was absolutely the first book, and they even used some of the lines from the first book. So I felt a lot better. I thought, oh, okay, so they have read the books, they sort of understand what is going on here. And it was a huge thrill to see the characters. This is from left to right, it's Hannah, Emily, Aria, Spencer. It was it's hard to describe what it's like to see this thing that you think of and you're sitting in your little office come to life on a screen and employ so many people, because I would visit the set and see so many people working on this and thriving off of it and really enjoying the story, and the fact that it touched a lot of new readers and things like that. So it was a huge, it was even, the show aired over 13 years ago. So it's like, it still is hard to talk about. It's still amazing. I'm still so grateful and completely aware that it's a very rare thing for this to happen. I mean, and I think the themes of the show really were the same themes of the book. It's the friendship, it's the sort of feeling different, kind of, trying to figure out your identity. And I think that's what made the show work. And I think that's what brought a lot of fans of the show over to the books too. This was on the last day. I'm not sure why I included this picture, but this was on the very last day of the show was filmed, which was in I want to say 2017. Oh, wait, hold on a second. Before that, I think I have a slide out of order. I was on the show. I was actually on the show twice. I am not an actor, absolutely not an actor. But again, they threw me in and it was very fun. I was a news analyst. I don't even remember what I had to say, but it was, it was all that sort of Hollywood glamour, and it was a lot of fun. On the last day, this is my son. He is with the actors on the show. Actually, the person next to me, I'm in the plaid dress, is my sister, the person that I did all the creative stuff, all the creative projects with when we were little. So it was really fun that we, got to see this at the end. And my son does not remember this. He's 5 at this time. And it's funny, he has grown up to, he's 11 now, and he now loves making movies and probably would have loved this experience had he remembered it, because they were still filming. It was last day of filming, but he was kind of too little to remember. He remembers a little bit of the trip, but like not a lot of this. Pretty Little Liars. There is something enduring about Pretty Little Liars that I am so grateful about, and I do think it's the sort of outcasts coming together in friendship, fighting against sort of in this case, this is a new show on HBO Max, much more horror based than anything that I ever had, but it's really worth checking out, I think. And it's worth it's great for teenagers, I think, because all of these characters, they are living very diverse lives. They're living their socioeconomic backgrounds are different. They, the one in the middle, she's pregnant. There's a whole kind of tragic story involving that. But they're going through some really interesting things and very unique things that I think teens these days, they'll see themselves in these characters. The guy in the background is very creepy, and he was never in any of my books. But it's been fun to see this reinvented, for a new audience. And there is going to be a season 2, but I did watch all of this. And I had no part in this. There were no books that this was based on, besides just the general idea of, someone watching, and, the idea of friendship and kind of people coming together. From Pretty Little Liars, I got to write more books. This is just a sampling of them. And I got to write, a book like The Elizas is more for adults. It's a thriller. And it's kind of about another topic I'm really interested in is mental illness and sort of exploring, memory and kind of how we remember things versus how someone else might remember something. And I just find the brain very interesting in general. So that's The Elizas is a little bit about that. Influence I is for young adults. It is about teenage influencers, which I knew nothing about. I wrote this with a young actress, Lilia Buckingham, and it was quite educational for me. It was interesting to collaborate. I have not done a lot of collaboration book-wise, so that was fun. But yeah, it was sort of a thriller, again, a murder mystery. A lot of what I write is murder mystery. It was a thriller about set in the world of influencers in LA, and it was very, very eye-opening in terms of research. And then Safe in My Arms is another adult novel, and it's about three moms who you can see a theme that I have. They're on the outskirts socially in this sort of very exclusive community, in this very exclusive preschool, and they feel like they're the people who don't belong, and they sort of witness this crime and kind of have to unpack what has happened while they have their own secrets going on. So very much of what I write about is people who feel a bit on the outside, except for the influence book. I would say, I think that's a little bit different, but that was a lot of fun to write. But yeah, it's thematically, it's always something that I'm interested in, whether it's from a mental illness perspective or whether it's, just sort of being different in some other way. It's always something that I've thought about as a writer. My newest book is called Wait for Me. It just came out this November, and it's for teens, and it's a bit of a mashup, though. It's a romance, but also with sort of a paranormal element. It's about past lives, and it's about a girl who kind of starts to hear voices, and yet again, it's sort of that mental illness element of, what is going on? Is this something I should be concerned about? Am I mentally healthy? What is going on here? But as it turns out, she begins to believe that she has a past life, and this past life is speaking to her. And it was a lot of fun to do research on people who have experienced what they believe are past lives, and just the interesting stories that have come from that, and kind of unbelievable in a way. So, that's always a fun thing when I write, to learn about something new, and to learn about a different way of thinking, or a different just a different experience. And I think that's always a fun thing as a writer, to get to experience somebody else's something that I certainly have not gone through, but I would love to have a past life. And the last thing that I wanted to talk about, and then we'll leave time for questions, is this is my new middle grade series. I don't have the cover on here. The cover is called Penny Draws a Best Friend. And it's a 4-book series right now. And it is about, I don't know if you experience this for those of you who have children, but during the pandemic, I had 2 very anxious kids, because of the uncertainty of life, because of having school at home, because of, not being able to see their grandparents, just probably absorbing a lot of the stress that I felt. And, I really wanted to write a book for them anyway. And these are my drawings too. I've always loved drawing. But, I wanted to, and then as I thought about it, I wanted to write about someone who, someone with anxiety. And this is Penny. She has a lot of anxieties. And this is sort of her talking about how much she loves reading. But, in the book, it normalizes, or I set out to normalize, I hope it does, feeling anxious, feeling like you need to be perfect, like the things that kids are going through right now. And Penny speaks to a therapist, I would say weekly, maybe more than weekly, at her school. And I wanted to normalize that because my kids certainly come home and say, can you like email the therapist, at school tomorrow? Can we talk to her? And just, make kids feel like it's okay to care about their mental health and not to like bury these worries, and figure out ways that they can care for themselves and make themselves feel better, whether that's talking to somebody or like Penny does here, she puts her bike helmet on and goes into the closet and reads a stack of books. But yeah, and it just feels, watching my kids go through a lot of things, it seems like they, there are a lot of scary things in the kid world that I am witnessing firsthand now. And it's been a lot of fun to sort of get to illustrate that and write about that, and, hopefully reach kids that are going through some of these things. So yeah, so that is basically my story. I see some like chat questions. How much do we have a little bit of time left. I was
Sarah,
trying to get.
We do. There are questions in the chat. So if you want to unshare your screen and you want to see the people and you want us to filter some of these questions, we can do that.
Okay. Do you want me to just look in the chat and go?
You can, if you want to see folks, or if somebody wants to come off mute to ask, you'd have to unshare, but however you'd like to do it.
Oh, okay. Oh, I can unshare. That's
Yes.
right. I forgot my screen was still shared. Okay. All right. So, I can just go.
It looks like the most recent question is from Sara Zickert. And Sarah, if I butchered your last name, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, and also please ask anything. I know I don't go through a lot of writing specifics. If that's interesting to you, anything, I'm happy to answer anything. Okay, so the first question is, you mentioned the story being very personal to you. Did you base any of the bullying scenes or lines from your own life to illustrate a non-inclusive environment around women? I would assume you mean Pretty Little Liars. Well, I mean, really anything. Pretty Little Liars was very personal to me. The characters were all very personal as far as different phases in my life that I was going through as far as personal growth, like, or my mindset at the time. I would say, as far as from a bullying perspective, I probably identified with the one character whose name is Hannah, who started out she started out, for lack of a better word, she felt unpopular. She felt awkward. She felt she wasn't with the right group of people, and she was made fun of that for it. And I definitely drew from my own experience, in 6th, 7th grade, and that's kind of where I get a lot of Hannah's character. Yeah, I absolutely drew from my own experience of what that felt like, and also sort of what Hannah did, which was like, well, I'm just gonna, bury those feelings and just make myself pretty and try to control which is also what I did. But I think that's sort of an interesting thing to talk about too with teenagers, is like, the need to control things, and and how that can get very out of control no matter, depending on what you're doing. But yeah, and I think there is definitely a non-inclusive. And so the second part of the question is, Did you base any of the bullying scenes or lines from your own life to illustrate a non-inclusive environment of women? Well, yes, yeah. I mean, I think that's pretty much the same thing. Like, I feel like growing up, there was sort of one kind of box girls could be in, and it was this certain kind of person. And if you weren't that certain kind of person, you were not accepted. And that is definitely something I experienced and something that I write about a lot. And I still write about it, just in sort of in different ways, even in my adult fiction as well. But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think. Some of my adult fiction, there's different characters with experiences that I don't have. For instance, in Safe in My Arms, which I showed in the presentation, there is a transgender character, a transgender woman, and she, is trying to fit in to this world of, very exclusive moms and can't find her place, but it's also sort of desperately wants to find her place. Well, obviously that's, I worked closely in that case with a sensitivity reader, and that's often what you have to do in fiction. You have to, if I obviously don't have that experience, so I need to make sure that what I'm writing, that character is authentic. So I worked with somebody who had that experience, a trans woman who read it very carefully for me, which was wonderful, and kind of flagged different things and said, I think this is, the more appropriate wording, or I think this character would feel like this or like that. And I've actually done that, if there are other kind of cultures that I am not part of, I usually use readers to make sure what I'm writing makes sense. And I actually even did it with the penny books. I sent them to my school's therapist to make sure that her therapist was giving her the right advice, because the advice made sense to me, but I had to make sure that this is actually what a therapist would say to kids. So yeah, that's a great question. Okay, I'm going to read one from Nora. How long does the process take you to complete a novel? Also, how did you find your first literary agent? Okay, so, writing a novel, I would say it takes me at least a year. I would say that's not actually writing the first draft of the book. Sometimes that's more like, I don't know, 3 months or something like that. But the whole process of it, writing the draft, sometimes it takes me a year to get an idea. But, I would say writing the draft of the book, having it revised, having the editor read it, having them send it back to you, revising, sometimes I revise. I have a recent book that is not out yet, that I swear I've revised like 4 times, like major revisions, a couple of total rewrites, just to make sure that it's right. So it can be all over the map. Pretty Little Liars was unique in that once that series got going, the publisher wanted those books to come out every 6 months. So I was on a turbo schedule of, I would write, I would write a draft in maybe, oh my gosh, I don't even know, maybe 2 months. And then my editors would read it, and then I'd have, 3 weeks or something to revise it. So that was on a much faster schedule, but that's kind of unsustainable. So I don't do that anymore. Although I will say the penny books they're also trying to release those really fast. So less words, but I'm doing all the drawings. So it's a lot of drawings. It's a little bit of a blur. I love doing it. I like working on a deadline, but it's very intense. There are so many good questions. Let me see. Do you plan on writing a memoir? That's from Fallon. Every 6 months. Wow. Yes, every 6 months was intense. Do I plan on writing a memoir? I don't, that's an interesting thing. So now that I have started illustrating, which I never thought I would do, and that's the other thing, is that if you think you want to write a book, you should go and write the book. If you think you want to illustrate something, even if you're like, well, I didn't go to art school, I have no background in illustration, because I absolutely don't. You know, it feels like a dream though to be illustrating something, because I love drawing, and you know, it's been a lot of fun. I made I really think about my time. I would like to maybe write a memoir about middle school, because I think middle school is so tough, and it's not exactly something I have written about yet. I think it would be fun for kids, like in a graphic novel. So we'll see. I mean, that would be fun. As far as a memoir, I mean, maybe much later, but not right now. Memoirs are funny. I love reading memoirs, but I feel like I don't have enough interesting, you know, as an author, just sort of working in your little office, you're like, "Oh, I haven't really, you know, I don't have an amazing, like, I have a great job. I love my job, but I don't know." But middle school would be fun to maybe draw and talk about what that experience was like, and you know, and get to illustrate it. And okay, let's see, what else do we have? Um, This is from William. When you write a mystery, do you plot the beginning, middle, or end first? Do you always know who the killer is? And how do you come up with the secrets the characters are hiding? Um, that so mysteries are tough. I feel like I always need to know who the killer is. Otherwise, I would start writing and then have a better idea going. It's better to have a plan, because then you can kind of layer in all of your clues. But I actually write really detailed outlines for most of the mysteries that I write, because there are so many clues, there are so many twists and turns, and it's hard to kind of feel your way through a mystery. I feel like they are very intricately plotted, most of them, and you know, you really have to know, like, um, yeah, you really have to know when your twists are coming, and when, you know, you're putting those characters that you don't trust, and you're not giving too much away. And there's a lot of to juggle. The middle grade books the penny books, I am kind of writing those more by feel. So I'm just sort of like, I kind of have a general idea of where they're going, but I don't know what each chapter is going to be. I don't know what each drawing is going to be. But with a mystery, I usually will outline. So I'll write, you know, I'll write it in order, but I will know the end before I write the beginning. But I usually then write in order. I usually don't. I know a lot of other authors who skip right to the end, and they will write the end, and then they'll sort of go backwards, or they'll just skip around. I generally write in order. I It's always sort of the way that I've done it. For Pretty Little Liars, sometimes because there were so many different characters and they all had their different chapters, sometimes I would write their individual stories one by one, but it would still be in order. Because mostly that was just, you know, I was only writing a chapter or two a day, and it was like, if I went totally in order and I skipped around with characters, then I'd lose track of what I was talking about. And but I usually write in order. How do I come up with the secrets the characters are hiding? I think, you know, as a writer, I think the thing that you really think about is, what do people want? What do characters want? What are the deepest desires inside of them? And you know, what are they doing to get that deepest desire? And yeah, what are they trying to hide? Because I think sometimes those go hand in hand. And I think if you do enough thinking about your characters, you can start to answer those questions. And the thing that was nice about Pretty Little Liars is that I knew those characters so well that eventually, you know, I knew what they wanted. I knew what they always wanted. I knew what sort of their triggers were. I knew what their insecurities were. And I knew I knew kind of what secrets they'd keep. I knew the plot, you know, the trouble they'd get in. So that would be fun. Oh, I just realized, Nora, I did not answer. How did I find my first literary agent? So yeah, literary agents are important for writers. They kind of help sell your book. Although these days, I feel like there are lots of ways that books can be sold. You can also self-publish, but I mean, I feel like I know people who publish on Wattpad and then get their books seen that way. I got my literary agent because of my ghostwriting. So I was a little bit lucky. I had been working with the same editors that I was using, or that were using me to ghostwrite those, the Secret Apartment and Samurai Girl and all of that. So the person who was selling those books to Random House or Penguin or whatever, she also agreed to represent me for Pretty Little Liars, which was a total dream. Not the typical route people usually go when getting an agent. I think it's usually, sometimes it's a struggle usually to get an agent. And normally I would have completely had a struggle if I would have had to send my manuscripts out to lots of agents and have them read it, and then it would be in the slush pile and all of that. So it was the one time when, the ghostwriting, which paid absolutely nothing, which was way more work than it was worth, but a huge learning experience, it did really pay off. And I say that to young writers a lot, you sometimes do have to pay your dues. And I think it was it was such a great learning process. And I did it for quite a few years. I probably did it for 5 or 6 years, and it was absolutely worth it. And I don't think I would have been inexperienced of a writer going straight from, having a story going straight to an agent had I not written all of those ghost written stories. How much time do we have?
Sarah, so with that, we have about a minute left. And what I want to do is, I know that you said that you are going to be gracious enough to send a signed box set to a participant or two. So thank you all for showing up, for sticking with us. If you look inside of the chat, I've put it in there several times and I'll do it again. Please fill out our post-event survey. I am going to collect all of that data in box 10, the only text box. Be sure to put your name and your email. Sarah and I will work together and we will reach out to the winner so that way you can get a signed box set from Sarah.
I actually have 2.
Oh, 2?
Yes, I have 2.
Your generosity.
Yes. Yeah. And I will mail them to you. I will sign them. You just have to tell me how to personalize. Yes. Thank you. Because this is like such a great, got such great participation, and I really appreciate everybody's questions. So yeah, I have 2.
I will absolutely do that. So if you all would not mind taking the time to do that. Last, I want to appreciate each and every one of you for showing up. This session is being recorded, as are all of our Inclusion Talk series. All you have to do is go to YouTube, type in Compass Family Services, follow our page, and you will see this and every Inclusion Talk series. Also, I want to share that we have 2 other talk series that are scheduled, that are coming up, that I want to invite you all to. And I hope that you will take us up on that offer. We have, first, if you go to the survey in the very last box, just put your name and your email address. Sarah and I will work together. We will reach out to you. We will get you your signed box set. For next month, our Inclusion Talk series is going to feature Mustafa Buyami. For Arab American Heritage Month, be sure to follow Compass Family Services on Eventbrite, where you will see each and every event we post. And then in May, for Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, we have Cynthia O. Young, who is our guest speaker. You will find this and so much more if you follow Compass Family Services anywhere we are on social media, especially on Eventbrite. Again, I want to thank each and every one of you all for being a part of today. I'm going to stop recording.